support service. Today, I'm going to go through the psychology programs, mental health programs that are available um, within the Federal Bureau of Prisons. The caveat here is that there is a limited amount of programs in a limited amount of facilities, which means this is something you may want to address before you get to the pre-sentence interview. Additionally, there are staffing shortages across the nation. And so while the program may be available, there may be a waiting list to get in, or it may have been temporarily shuttered, or there's no one to actually, there's not enough psychologists there to have this program. And so let's go through it very briefly, but this is a question checklist, if you will, that I go through with individuals. Is your client going to be a first timer, young male, 32 years of age or younger, facing a 60 months or more sentence? Then are they going to be interested in participating in a program that's going to teach them how to create a smoother transition or adjustment to federal prison? And will they be sentenced to a medium security facility? If these answers are yes, and it can be medium or high, but if these answers are yes, then the program is called a BRAVE program, and there's 2 locations nationwide. This is why I say that there's a limited availability. So you'd either be putting the checkbox yes or no. Is your client a male or facing a high security penitentiary setting where there's a history of either substance abuse or dependence, major mental illness, as evidenced with a current diagnosis of psychotic disorder that could include mood disorder, anxiety, schizophrenia, delusion, or substance-induced psychotic disorders? There's limited availability. This is called the Challenge Program, and there are 12 locations or 12 facilities nationwide. Now, let me add to this is that when you have here the psychotic disorder, schizophrenia, substance-induced psychotic disorders, the kind of care you're going to get is not what you're used to on the outside. It is not going to be done with physicians, most likely, or it's not going to be done hopefully it's done with medication. There's just no guarantee from this facility to facility that you're going to get a type of program that you feel is applicable to you. But it is a challenge program, and quite honestly, it's better than nothing. Is your client a male or female with serious mental illness, but does not require inpatient treatment? In other words, in order to get inpatient treatment, those are called care level 4 medical centers, and you have to have 24/7, 365 nursing care. If you don't need that, you're not going to get into a inpatient type setting. They lack the skills to function in general population. Would they be interested in a mental health program that works closely with psychiatry services to ensure they receive appropriate medication and have the opportunity to build positive relationships with their treating psychiatrist? Again, there's 5 locations nationwide, but it's this is it's not going to be the type of program or the type of doctor-patient interaction that you're going to be used to when you think about this coming from home. This is going to be done more in a prison setting, and it's better than nothing, especially if you don't have the skills to function in general population. But all of these psychology, psychiatry, mental health type issues, you may or may not wish to bring up at all. This is a strategic conversation between you and your attorneys. For males who have a diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, they're going to be directed to the STAGE program. But there's only 2 locations nationwide. So let me just pull this one up. I'll show you here very briefly. This is USP Florence, Terre Haute, and this is the STAGES program residential. And so each one of these links, bear with me. Okay. So each one of these links here has it opens up to the actual program. Is your client male or female with a history of mental illness related to physical, mental, intimate, domestic violence, or traumatic PTSD? And again, are they interested in attending a program with a mental health specialist that's going to help them focus on development personal resilience, effective coping skills, emotional self-regulation, and a healthy interpersonal relationships. All of this sounds good, and it's better than nothing. The Resolve program probably is a little bit better than most. There's 31 locations nationwide, but it is something to think about with your attorney before you get to your pre-sentence interview. Does your client have significant functional impairment due to intellectual disabilities, neurological deficits, and or remarkable social skills deficits? For example, autism spectrum disorder, obsessive compulsive, epilepsy, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, traumatic brain injuries. These are just a few, but it's called the skills program, and there's only 2 locations nationwide. And so these are definitely different categories of mental illness or of one's ability to interact with others, here, including institutional adjustment. But again, it's something to consider. And let me open this one up for you here, skills program. And it goes, this is more of a detailed, but there's only 2 locations nationwide in the skills program. We're going to continue. Then there's drugs. Goes into new drugs to work with people with autism, dental care. It's going to be tough to find a dentist who can deal with someone else who is autistic. Is your client a male inmate facing prison with a serious mental illness, a primary borderline personality disorder? We already described that stages. And again, there's only 2 locations, X and Y. Sex offenders. If for a non-residential sex offender program, is your client considered low to moderate risk with a history of a single sex crime, or they're serving their sentence for the first time for an internet sex offense? If yes, here it's more important. There are 9 locations nationwide, but to get them into one of these programs is probably more important because it keeps them away from inmates who have a hostile nature towards people who've committed, sexual offenses. If it's a sex offender treatment program residential, where there's considered high risk sex offender, in other words, is there a history of multiple sex crimes or reoffensive, extensive non-sexual criminal histories, and a high level of sexual deviancy or hypersexuality? Those are crime that include rape, sodomy, incest, cardinal knowledge, transportation with coercion, force for commercial purposes, sexual exploitation of children. Here, there are 2 locations in the country nationwide. Commitment and treatment program for sexually dangerous persons. There used to be one, and there still may be, but I'm not able to identify it. At Butner, they have postdoctorate programs for psychology majors, but I don't know that they're identified as providing that type of care, if you will. Female integrated treatment program. Is your client a candidate for behavioral treatment for females with substance abuse disorders, mental illness, and traumatic related disorders? This is for women. Would your client also qualify for RDAP? This is the drug abuse program that can provide up to a year off of their sentence, and where drugs were involved in the crime within 12 months of the arrest. But what the FIT program does is that it combines the mental health component plus the drug program in one location. There are three locations nationwide. The actual drug program, which is where you have either an addiction to drugs, alcohol abuse of prescription and over-the-counter medications. There are 32 locations nationwide in the RDAP program. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for taking your time to tune into my videos. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to give me a call. I'm a physician. I too have been through the federal system, and I was able to get my medical license reinstated, and I'd like to be able to pass on what I've learned to you. Again, thank you very much for taking the time to listen, and I hope everyone has a safe day.